Well, good afternoon and welcome to Live Impact News right here on 13 News Now Plus. It is 1:01 p.m., January 28th, 2026. Today is a Wednesday. Actually, I had the enviable experience of not quite realizing that it was a Wednesday and that I actually thought it was a little earlier in the week when I got to work today. I said to someone, wow, is it Wednesday already? Something to that effect. And usually I kind of feel like, oh, I thought it was Thursday, but it's actually Wednesday, which will kind of bring you down a little bit. This version, kind of uplifting. People's producer, Nia Campbell, is here. Speaking of uplifting, Nia, what do you think of that story that I just told? Was that interesting at all?
I was a bit confused, but then I got what you were saying.
Okay. Very good. Well, I will try to bring us down a less confusing path as we go through the next hour and 59 minutes of live impact news right here on 13 News Now Plus. We've got all of the most impactful, most breaking, most headline-driven news for you today here locally, nationally, and globally, of course. But we're not just looking at the headlines. We are looking below the surface. We're able to dive a little deeper into these stories as we investigate what they all mean, what happened, and where they're headed. Now, we do have, speaking of what's to come, speaking of where things are headed, there is an expectation that there could be a coastal storm bringing wintry weather, gusty winds, and tidal flooding to Hampton Roads this weekend. Now, I know that may sound a little bit repetitive because we had a winter weather storm just last weekend that required a lot of forecasting, a lot of preparation, and a lot of coverage. Well, it appears as though a second winter storm situation is on the way, and we'll have a meteorologist, Hunter Forrest, will be with us right around 2 o'clock p.m. is our schedule right now for him to break down that forecast and let you know what is expected, what our team knows so far about what may be coming. Again, we're still a ways out. This isn't expected to make impact until Saturday and Sunday, January 31st into February 1st. But a weather impact alert has been declared by our weather team. So we will have Hunter Forrest on here at the top of our second hour to discuss that forecast. Now, in terms of the first hour, in terms of what we're starting the show with, Marco Rubio has been in front of a committee speaking for some time. I mean, I want to say maybe 3 hours long, 4 hours long. He has been speaking in front of a committee about the situation in Venezuela. Of course, the United States military extracted Nicolas Maduro, the president of Venezuela, and brought him to the United States to stand trial. And since then, the United States has been involved with Venezuela in their governance, with the interim president, along with relations between President Donald Trump and discussions between President Donald Trump and the opposition leader in Venezuela, the Nobel Prize winner. So that is a developing situation, and now one where Secretary of State Marco Rubio took to the podium earlier today to testify in front of members of Congress. And that was happening all the way up until just about 10 minutes ago. They went off the air. However, we have been monitoring and recording that committee hearing for some time, and we are going to go ahead and play a portion of that. The portion we're going to play directly involves Virginia Senator Tim Kaine questioning Marco Rubio about the situation. Tim Kaine, of course, has been vocal about what's been happening in Venezuela between the United States and the Venezuelan government, and now he had a chance to question the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, about that situation. Let's listen in on that recorded portion of this committee hearing, and then we'll meet back here in the studio to move along with our day.
Thank you. Senator Kaine. Thank you. We started this operation on September 2nd with the attack on Venezuelans in boats in open waters. And now we are nearly 5 months in. Next week is 5 months. Finally, a public hearing. Wow, how novel. Finally, a public hearing in the Senate or House. This is the first public hearing we've had. 200 folks who are on secret designated combatant lists have been killed. U.S. troops have been injured. Hundreds of millions of dollars have been spent. An armada amassed. The announcement of a new Monroe Doctrine, which does not land well in the Americas. Democrats have been asking over and over again, can we have a public hearing? Can we share what we know with the American public? Finally, a public hearing. But even that hearing is constrained. I'd like to talk about the complete weakness of the legal rationale about the strikes on boats in international waters, but I can't because the administration has only shared it with members in a classified setting. I can't tell you why the domestic rationale is hollow and the international rationale is hollow. I can't tell you why the rationale for attacking Venezuela is hollow because, again, the rationale has been shared with us in a closed setting. I can't share with you the grim details of the murder of shipwrecked survivors in open waters that we all know because we've seen the videos and we've questioned the U.S. military officials involved about legality because the administration will not release that publicly. They released the boat strike videos publicly, but they hid the second strike that killed struggling shipwreck survivors, even from Congress, for nearly 3 months, but I can't really talk to you about it. I can't talk to you about the weakness of the targeting criteria being used to attack boats in the Caribbean and Pacific. I would encourage any colleague, if you have not, go to the classified setting and ask for a briefing on each strike and ask this question: what was the evidence that there were narcotics on that craft? You will be very surprised if you ask that question about every strike. And so even in this first public hearing, 5 months in, there's a lot we can't talk about. If it was such a righteous operation, why is the administration and the majority in this Senate so jealously protecting the details about it from being revealed to the American public? I have Virginians deployed in this operation. I can't answer their families' questions. Thank God we're having a public hearing 5 months in. This is supposed to be the greatest deliberative body in the world. Mr. Secretary, who won the July 2024 Venezuelan presidential election?
Oh, I think the whole world would acknowledge it was Edmundo Gonzalez.
Who lost that election?
Maduro.
And his vice president, Delcy Rodriguez. Now, you have made the decision, the administration has made the decision in the aftermath of the attack that Delcy Rodriguez should be leading the country. Let me read something that President Trump said about her on January 14 about Delcy Rodriguez, who lost the election with Maduro. We just had a great conversation today, and she's a terrific person. I mean, she's somebody that we have worked with very well. Let me tell you what Delcy Rodriguez said the day after Venezuela was attacked. Governments around the world are simply shocked that the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela is the victim and target of an attack of this nature, which undoubtedly has Zionist undertones. What the hell did Delcy Rodriguez mean when she said this attack had Zionist undertones? I'm assuming you have no idea.
Oh, I have an idea what she meant. I mean, what's the question?
What does she mean when she says this attack has Zionist undertones?
Look, I'd have to answer, but let me understand in a broader context. No one here is telling you that this is what we want to see in the long term.
Okay.
This is not a campaign to leave in place the system that's currently in place.
Let me switch.
But we either but I mean, the criticism of us is... All right, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I'm ready to switch now to talk about somebody that you know well.
I thought you raised an important point. If I can get back to it, I will.
You know well and you respect well Maria Corina Machado. Here's what President Trump said about her. Won the Nobel Prize in the aftermath of the attack on Venezuela. I think it would be very tough for her to be the leader. She doesn't have the support within or the respect within the country. She's a very nice woman, but she doesn't have the respect. What did President Trump mean by that?
Yeah. First of all, I've known Maria Corina for probably 12 years, 13 years. Have dealt with her probably more than as much as anybody on this committee has for certain. And I'll be meeting with her today, in fact. And we met with her a couple weeks ago. So here's the reality, though, and I think what the president was pointing to. And I think Maria Corina would acknowledge this.
I talked to her last week.
Well,
she's very disappointed in those comments, and so are Venezuelans in my state.
Okay, well, she didn't share that with me or with us, but I would say this to you. The president is acknowledging is that today, as it stands, whether we like it or not, the elements of control in that country, the people with the guns, the people that control the guns and the institutions of government there, are in the hands of this regime. So we either, on the one hand, we're getting criticized. Some people are saying we don't want regime change. On the other hand, we're being criticized for not undertaking regime change.
Mr. Secretary,
what we're trying to trigger here is a process of stabilization, recovery, and transition to something where Maria Corina and others can be a part of. And that's what we're working
You have
for.
respect for her, don't you?
Sure.
Okay, great. My last question is this.
And so does the president, by the way. He met with her. They had a great meeting. And he actually he spoke to her last
here's
week
what he
in my
said.
presence.
Here's what he said after that meeting. We're talking to her, and maybe we can get her involved in some way. I'd love to be able to do that. Maybe we can do that. We'll set the terms for this Nobel Prize winner having a leadership role. Last question is this. You talked about the speech in Davos. Here's something the president said in Davos. I'm helping NATO until the last few days. When I told them about Iceland, they loved me. They're not here for us on Iceland, that I can tell you. Our stock market took the first dip yesterday because of Iceland, so Iceland has already cost us a lot of money. The president repeatedly mistook Iceland for Greenland, right? We're not mad at Iceland. They haven't cost us any money. The president just mistook the two countries for each other, correct?
Yeah, he meant to say Greenland, but I think we're all familiar with presidents that have verbal stumbles. We've had presidents like that before. Some made a lot more than this one.
Nice try. Thanks.
All right, thank you. I thought he did well. Let's see, we got Senator Paul.
Our founders debated extensively over.
All right, back in here in Live Impact News after hearing from Virginia Senator Tim Kaine questioning Secretary of State Marco Rubio about some of the international relations that have been happening under the Trump regime. You can in particular hear Senator Kaine passionate at the beginning of that clip that we just showed with the finally a public hearing after months and months of interference in Venezuelan waters, with Venezuelan ships, and now with Venezuela's president, who again has been captured, extracted, and is waiting here in the United States to stand trial. So going back and forth with Secretary of State Marco Rubio repeatedly in that clip as well. If we have a chance, we will certainly air more of that committee hearing. We'll hear from other Congress members and more from Secretary of State Rubio as well if we have time later on in the show. For now, we need to move on to a couple of different events, but we'll conclude that portion by saying Rubio did say that Trump acted to take out a major U.S. national security threat in the Western Hemisphere, one of the core statements of this hearing from Secretary of State Marco Rubio in regards to President Trump's actions in Venezuela. But again, more to come if we have time, which I'm hoping that we will, from that committee hearing, which was going for quite some time today. We also want to go to some quick breaking news here very briefly on Live Impact. Something being reported from multiple places. We are going to go ahead and source this to CNN for right now. That is the publication where we are getting this information. But Trump tells the Minneapolis mayor he's playing with fire if federal immigration law isn't enforced. That is one of the updates to come out of Minneapolis as we continue to monitor that situation following the shooting and killing of Alex Preddy on Saturday afternoon. We also have another headline here, also coming from CNN's homepage, that a DHS official is confirming that officers were placed on administrative leave, which is standard protocol as internal probes are conducted. So again, the officers involved in Alex Preddy's shooting in Minneapolis have been placed on leave. That information confirmed by a DHS official who again says that standard protocol as internal probes are conducted. But those officers now on administrative leave after that situation in Minneapolis over the weekend. Now, what we don't see here, in terms of the officers involved in Alex Preddy's shooting in Minneapolis, what we do not see here is whether it's all of the officers who were present in that video, who were involved in restraining, restricting, at times attacking Alex Preddy, or if it's just officers who pulled the trigger on that afternoon. That's information that we do not have in front of us. The only update we have right now is that the officers involved in Alex Preddy's shooting in Minneapolis have been placed on leave. We don't know to what degree of the involvement of these officers we're dealing with here. But if we get more updates on that, we will bring them to you on Live Impact News as soon as we receive them. Now, we have a very special guest coming up here on Live Impact News. We're going to be talking to a representative from the Wasson Center at Christopher Newport University. This morning, they released a survey of Virginians about a number of different topics that concern the Commonwealth and the country at large. Before we get to that interview, it is coming up next because we're going to do a very brief commercial break, and then we'll be back right here on Live Impact News. All right, thanks for sticking with us here on Live Impact News. Back from our brief commercial break, and as promised, we have a special guest joining us here on the stream today. Rebecca Bromley Trujillo is the research director at the Wasson Center for Civic Leadership. She's an associate professor at the Department of Political Science at Christopher Newport University, and she has taken some time out of what I'm sure is a very busy day to spend with us here on Live Impact News. Rebecca, how are you today? Thanks so much for stopping by.
The point being, I mean, the
I'm
judge
doing
can
very
know
well.
people
How are you doing?
around town.
I am doing
and
great.
can
We're
know
digging
people
through this
involved in the
survey all
case to a
morning here
degree.
as
every
we
now and then I
received
would
your
get a-
guys' update. We're going to dig into some
How
of the
can we get a
findings here
different
in
judge? How
particular,
can we
but
get a
first I
different
just
judge? I don't
wanted to
want
ask
this
you, going through this process and then finally releasing everything out to the public, what is it like for you to have just kind of come to the conclusion of what I'm sure is a very, very big project?
I mean, every year
I've
we
got
do this
30
State of the
different
Commonwealth
cases in front
survey.
of this
We try to
judge.
tap into the issues
So
that
the
the
last
General
thing I
Assembly
want
is
to do
thinking
is
about.
get on
And
his
that
or her
process
bad
alone
side
takes quite a bit
by
of research and time. And so we hope to cover as many topics as possible. And I think the results are fascinating and they really inform the democratic process. So excited to jump in.
Agreed. You talk about the results being fascinating. We'll just start with what jumped out to you as maybe the or some of the most fascinating results that you got.
Yeah, so there's a lot of different elements here. This is a very policy heavy survey. And so I'd say there's kind of some big takeaways about how people are generally feeling. So we always start off by asking, do you feel like the direction of the Commonwealth is going in a good direction? How do you feel about the direction of the country? And I'd say that folks clearly seem more optimistic about the Commonwealth than they do about the country. So right now, only 28% of Virginians think that the country is moving in the right direction, whereas 65% say wrong. That really stood out, that this feeling that people are really unhappy, especially with national level politics. And that also comes through in Trump's approval rating, which is the lowest that I have seen in a Virginia survey. 34% approve of Trump's performance, 62% disapprove. And so there's a lot going on there. But when you kind of shift to looking at the state level, people seem a little bit more optimistic. So we asked them about, newly inaugurated Governor Spanberger and whether they feel optimistic or pessimistic about her term as governor. 60% say they're optimistic and 33% say pessimistic. And then you kind of move into the issues and you see a lot of support for some of the things that Spanberger ran on and that the Democratic majority in our state legislature is carrying forward.
And then two follow-up questions for you based on that answer. When you say the lowest approval rating for Trump that you've seen, does that stretch back to his first term as well?
It does. So I looked all the way back, and in 2017, he had a 35% approval rating, but this one is even lower than that. So it has not gotten lower.
Okay. And then when it comes to the 60% who say they are optimistic about Spanberger's upcoming gubernatorial term, is that a normal number for the start of a gubernatorial term? How does that compare to the start of Youngkin's term?
I would say that, so we did not ask this precise question when Youngkin started, but what I'd say is it's a little bit higher than I might expect. However, Virginians do tend to be more friendly towards their governors than towards presidents. So some of that is coming through. And obviously, she also was just elected, so there was a lot of support for her candidacy. And so I think that it makes sense that it's sort of filtering into the start of her term. But it's definitely a little bit higher than I think many would expect.
Okay, and then when it comes to that comparison of optimistic about the state versus optimistic about the country, I believe I saw here, going through the numbers, we see some that stretch up into the 80s, some that stretch up into the 90s, but there is a 100% that jumped out to me as well, and that is 100% of
Yes.
Democrats say the country is headed in the wrong direction. How rare is it to see a 100% on any of these questions?
Almost never. When I saw that, I triple checked it because I thought, really? 100% of Democrats say the country is going in the wrong direction. That's very rare. Usually you'll even get 1 or 2%. And even on Trump's approval rating, 1% of Democrats approved of his performance. So usually there's at least somebody out there. So yeah, that's shocking in its way.
Yeah, and when it comes to staying on that topic of national versus state, obviously you're working strictly with Virginians here at CNU at the Wasson Center.
Yes.
But when you see that dichotomy of more Virginians are optimistic, whereas more Virginians are pessimistic about the country, is that something that you believe would hold true throughout the 50 states? Is that approval in the state or optimism about the state is higher than it is as the nation overall?
I would guess usually yes. Usually people are feeling a little bit better about their state governments than they are about the national government. But this level is much higher than I think is typical for sure.
Yeah, and then a statement that I hear a lot, sort of in modern politics or even just modern American society, is we're more divided than ever before. That sort of rhetoric and that sort of thought process when it comes to the right versus the left, conservatives versus liberals, Democrats versus Republicans. In your survey, there's a number of issues where there is that sort of stark disagreement, but there are also issues where there's a lot of common ground: data centers, union representation for non-union members, sick leave, medical leave, things like that. When it comes to the division, that sort of dividing line between Democrat versus Republican, did you find that there was more common ground than usual, or did things shake out as they typically do in terms of that divide?
That's a great question. I think so. We are seeing clear common ground. The data centers is really fascinating because this is not an issue that has always been partisan, but certainly it has been in the past. And so to see both Democrats, Republicans, and independents support limits on data centers shows a real clear shift and a lot of people agreeing there. Certainly, we're also seeing a lot of agreement on things like paid sick leave and paid family and medical leave. Those numbers are really high. Definitely a number of Republicans are supporting those policies, not just Democrats and independents. And then even on something like the minimum wage, which typically the Republican Party does not support, almost half of Republicans support this. Not quite half, but it gets pretty close. And so there's clearly some division within the party on that, but there's a lot of common ground among Virginians on that policy. And what I tell my students very often is that it appears that we're extremely divided, and in many ways we are. But when you start getting into the weeds of policy, there's actually a lot of common ground that I think is unexpected for people. And then we are seeing some of that in this survey. Now, clearly, there are areas where the parties disagree, and things like the constitutional amendments on reproductive rights and felon reenfranchisement, there's definitely pretty obvious partisan differences on those, as are partisan differences in the redistricting, the potential for drawing new lines. So certainly there are some partisan divisions, but it's not maybe as much as people think it is.
Which is good to see, and which I think is an important reminder, right? Because especially when we focus, a lot of the national focus is on those hot button issues where there's clear divide. But then you dig into a survey like this and you see so many issues where there is a lot of common ground. I think it's illuminating and it's a good reminder. I want to stick on one of those issues where there is that common ground, those data centers. What to you stood out about your polling around data centers?
So there tends to be, so in my field, I study environmental policy, and there tends to appear to be a divide on things like renewable energy. But when you look at these data on in the survey on data centers, even a majority of Republicans support requiring new data centers to use renewables or nuclear power. And so that suggests that there's been a meaningful shift. Now, tons of unity around things like requiring site assessments for data centers to look at their potential impact on things like water usage, the electric grid, carbon emissions, and agricultural impacts. So really high support for that. 86% support that in our survey. And then also 81% support doing a noise study if you're going to locate a data center in your homes or schools. And so there's actually a ton of common ground, and there's very little partisan difference on those questions.
I want to ask a more theoretical question in regards to that issue. And if you kind of want to say, hey, well, I'd rather just kind of focus on the survey, that's a difficult thing to prognosticate about in this setting, please feel free. When it comes to data centers, we talk about, like you said, a lot of common ground on a lot of different aspects of that issue. It's also a very new issue. Do you think that there is any credibility to the thought process that being such a new issue, there are campaigns have not gotten a hold of it. The media has not gotten a hold of it as much. It has not become something that is used so much in society on different sides and in different narratives, but rather is something that, because it's so new and because it's sort of untouched by all the different mechanisms of the United States, it allows for there to be more common ground because it hasn't been politicized in any way, shape, or form. Is there any credibility to that sort of, I don't know, that thought process?
Yeah, so I would say oftentimes people's opinions are guided by political elites, so elected officials and also the media. And so if those folks have not really tapped into the issue yet, it doesn't allow for that polarization around party to occur. And so I do think there is something to that, what you're saying. And it's not necessarily a criticism of the public, but we do tend to, okay, what does my political party say? I'm going to move towards that. That's a common thing that people do, and so it's kind of nice to see that, okay, when we can just sort of think and not really hear others in our ear, we do actually have a lot of common ground.
All right. Another thing that's kind of illuminating when we think about that division that we're told so often has kind of taken hold of the country. Now, I want to talk policy issues that you've seen a major change in. Are there any policy issues where over the course of the last maybe decade, maybe 5 years, you've seen a stark change in how they're viewed by Virginians?
Yeah, so I mean, certainly, well, even literally data centers have shifted as people get more information. So we have seen shifts in that in our polling. I would say a lot of the issues that we polled on today, though, have received fairly consistent support in the past. So we have definitely asked many times, for instance, about marijuana retail sale. Every year that it's come up in the General Assembly, we have asked the question. That's stuck around 60% support for allowing a retail market for marijuana to happen in Virginia. And so you do see some consistency. There are other issues where it really shifts depending on the context. And so, like, for instance, gun related issues tend to really ebb and flow depending on whether there's been a recent shooting or a recent devastating event. And so we do see people wanting more strict gun laws following a mass shooting or other major event. And then we see them kind of moving away from that the further removed they get from those events. And so that happens with a lot of issues. But as far as sort of a long trend that has gone in one direction, I can't say that any of the issues we surveyed on today show that sort of clear pattern. But yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, and we hear affordability is kind of the buzzword when it comes to national politics right now and on down into Virginia politics. Many of the Democratic officials who were elected in this most recent cycle focused quite a bit on affordability, and it seems to be something that had real traction with the public. Anything about your survey that kind of backs up or can help to explain why that was the case?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, certainly Governor Spamberger has been talking heavily about affordability, and she's mentioned a lot of different policies, some of which we cover here. And so you're really seeing that support around things like paid family and medical leave and increasing the minimum wage. And so these get high support. So the family and medical leave gets 84% support in our survey, $15 minimum wage, 78% support. And so that's clearly resonated. And I actually also think that's one of the reasons we have these high numbers for the data center policies, because there's an affordability concern around energy, and data centers can contribute to high energy prices. And so I think that's part of that narrative about affordability.
Yeah, definitely. And then when it comes to, you break these down in a lot of different demographics, I'm wondering if there were any issues that stood out as particularly important to young people, not just in their numbers with young people, but young people caring more about any particular issues than maybe older generations or generations that came before them do in this survey.
Yeah, so I mean, top issues for young people in the survey are definitely pretty heavily concentrated around inflation. So that's true of a lot of Virginians, but young people even more so. They're new in the workforce or entering the workforce and really concerned about being able to afford things. And so as costs rise, they're naturally concerned. And so we definitely see that. As far as a standalone issue, on average, we tend to see more young folks concerned about reproductive rights. And that's something we've also surveyed our students at CNU, and that has been consistently a top issue among CNU students. And I think that's the case among a lot of young people.
Is that something that you've seen increase since the controversial Supreme Court ruling when Roe v. Wade was overturned?
Yes, absolutely. That has.
And then you talk about your students. I'm wondering, do you have a group of students that work with you on this? Is it something you talk about regularly in your classes? I mean, what is the student body involvement when it comes to this survey?
Yeah, so we have students in the Watson Center called Watson Scholars, and a number of them serve on the Watson Survey Committee. And so they work with me on surveys. They get to write their own survey that they give to the CNU student population, and they learn a lot from that process. And so it's really a joy to work with the students. And I certainly talk about these surveys in my classes. So I traditionally teach things like American political behavior and campaigns and elections. And so they get to learn how the process works for writing a survey, how the methodology works in terms of the survey weights, and how you can trust some surveys over others based on the kinds of methods that they're using. And so for me, it's really important that that students learn the process and understand how important it is to write these fair questions and nonpartisan questions to really understand where people are coming from and just to inform the broader democratic process.
And you mentioned, how do you know you can trust a survey? You talked about nonpartisan questions already as a key factor and something that is important in creating a trustworthy survey. What are some of the other main ingredients to a survey that you can trust the results of?
Yeah, so there's a few things I would always look for in a survey that's coming out. One of them is sample size. We at the Watson Center, I say we have the gold standard. We always go for at least 800 Virginia registered voters. You do not actually need 800 to get a true representation of the state as long as you are using random sampling. So you draw a random sample and then you random digit dial those folks. And then we also use what are called survey weights. So anytime you do a random draw and then you call people, there will be some people that are more likely to pick up the phone than others. And you have to account for that in your survey weighting process at the back end after the survey is conducted. And so we make sure that we are weighting our surveys to reflect the different regions of the state, different racial groups, gender, and education. And this is just to make sure that this is actually representative of the Virginia registered voter population. The other key thing to see is, does the organization report a margin of error? If they are not reporting that, you should not trust that survey. All surveys have some error, right? This is a random draw and it could deviate from the actual population. And so that's something you should always see reported. And so I think sample size, method of how you're contacting people and whether it's random and whether you're reporting out key data and using survey weights. Those are the main things.
Okay, and then when it comes to digging in a little deeper into the numbers, when you see a governor who has such a high optimism rating going into her term, you know that you'll be doing this survey again before long. Is it just natural attrition that will come down a little bit? And why is that, if yes is the answer?
Yes, I would say generally people tend to be more optimistic at the beginning. That's not always the case, but usually, yes. I have a lot of hope. Okay, this is what this person wants to achieve. And then once they get into actually governing, it turns out to be really difficult to pass major policy and to make big impacts and reforms. And so I think people start with a lot of hope and maybe they're feeling let down sometimes. Because our political process moves slow. It's very difficult sometimes to get things done. And so people get frustrated by that. That said, I've certainly seen, approval ratings ebb and flow. And so it's certainly not one trajectory. And so we will see, I'm sure Spanberger will have moments where she has a much higher approval rating and others where maybe it's lower. But on average, we do tend to be nicer to our governors than our presidents.
Yeah, and then in terms of our outgoing governor, Governor Youngkin, 44% approval rating for him on his way out of office. Where does that sort of fall in terms of the average that you're likely to see?
Yeah, so it's hard to compare because we don't always ask this question at precisely the same time. That said, this is a little low, especially low for Youngkin himself. His approval rating in our polls typically are around 50%, 52%, 53%. So it's definitely a bit low, but I think it does reflect that he was outgoing, and there's a lot of angst about inflation and the economy, and so that often plays into approval ratings. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's kind of experiencing some hits from how things are going economically.
Okay, and then you mentioned the gold standard. You've been the gold standard as an interview guest as well. We really appreciate you staying with us
Thanks.
for all this time, answering all these questions. Is there anything else that you want to illuminate about the survey for our viewers before we let you go?
I just want to reiterate that we actually have a lot in common as Virginians. And so try to focus on that. I know it's easy to get caught up in the divide between the parties, but really there's a lot of common ground, and I hope we're able to build on that over the next few years.
Yeah, and it's a very clear takeaway looking at some of these numbers. It definitely more common ground than you would think, just kind of moving through everyday life in a very, very difficult time here in the United States. So we appreciate you sitting with us and kind of going through all the numbers with us. And I hope that you get a little break after this and kind of relax at least
Thank
for
you.
a little bit now that this is out. And hopefully we get to have you on again as more surveys are released in the future.
Absolutely. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks, Rebecca. All right, so
Take
kind of
care.
a special segment here on Live Impact News today. This Wasson Center poll, we get these periodically. They are always very informative, a lot of really great stuff. Our own Janet Roach will have stories on this particular survey, I believe at 4:30 and 5:30. I can double check on those times, but in our shows today, we will certainly have more coverage of the Wasson Center poll, and we really appreciate Rebecca Bromley Trujillo for coming on with us and spending some time. So we are now going to take another quick break. And after the break, we have a lot to dig into from earlier today. We have a lot more to get to here on Live Impact News. And of course, we're just 20 minutes away from our forecast today. Hunter Forst will be joining us here in studio to talk about this possible winter storm that is headed our way for this weekend. Possible snow, possible wintry mix, possible tidal flooding, all back to Hampton Roads after last weekend was more of the same in that regard. So a forecast coming up, but more headlines of the day before that. But before any of that, another commercial break. All right, welcome back to the Live Impact News studio. Let's go over a major story coming out this morning after an incident last night. A man was arrested after charging at Representative Ilhan Omar and spraying her with liquid during a town hall. Ilhan Omar, of course, is a congresswoman out of Minnesota, someone who has been in the headlines due to her frequent mentions in the posts and the press conferences from President Donald Trump. He has repeatedly targeted her during his attacks on Minneapolis, on Minnesota, on the Somali population in that state and that city. And now a town hall in Minneapolis on Tuesday. Again, a man charged the podium where Ilhan Omar was giving remarks and appeared to squirt a liquid at her, tackled to the ground by security after a brief struggle. The man was identified, and I'm going to try to get this pronunciation right, as 55-year-old Anthony Kazmerzak. He was arrested and booked into jail on suspicion of third-degree assault, according to Minneapolis police. Now, Ilhan Omar did continue with her town hall event. By all reports, she finished her town hall event. She said, "I'm going to finish my remarks. It is important for me to continue." Those were not the exact words she used. The words she used actually involved some profanity, so we will not repeat that here, but clearly an emotional night in Minneapolis, another in a long line of emotional days and nights in Minneapolis. We will continue to remind you again that we are less than a week removed from Alex Preddy being shot and killed by Border Patrol agents in Minneapolis on Saturday afternoon. A United States citizen, a VA nurse, Alex Preddy, shot and killed by agents on Saturday afternoon. And now Ilhan Omar charged and sprayed with a liquid, finishing her town hall afterwards. Shortly after the man charged the podium, Omar called for abolishing Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, and afterwards she told reporters she will not be intimidated. Quote, "You know, I've survived more, and I'm definitely going to survive intimidation and whatever these people think they can throw at me because I'm built that way." We did receive comments from President Trump in a phone interview Tuesday evening with ABC News senior political correspondent Rachel Scott. Trump said he hadn't seen video of the incident, and without providing any extra evidence, he accused Omar of staging the attack. Quote, "I don't think about her. I think she's a fraud. She probably had herself sprayed knowing her," end quote. Those were the words from President Donald Trump, though again, no evidence was provided to back up that claim by the president. Omar said in a post on X, "I'm okay. I'm a survivor, so this small agitator isn't going to intimidate me from doing my work. I don't let bullies win. I'm grateful to my incredible constituents who rallied behind me. Minnesota strong." So, unrest continues in the city of Minneapolis. We, of course, gave you an update that the officers involved in the shooting of Alex Preddy have been put on leave. We gave you that update right at the top of the show. Any more updates that come out of that situation we'll bring to you as soon as we get them right here on Live Impact. Now, a couple things are happening. We're very close to getting our forecast from meteorologist Hunter Forst. He actually has entered the building. Hunter Forst is here. But before we go to Hunter, Naya, I don't know if you see here, there is an event going on today about some of the Trump accounts that he's been talking about. Financial accounts that are purported to go to young people to help them build savings. There is a $1,000 from the U.S. Treasury Department. I don't know exactly how they'll be allocated or who exactly they'll be allocated to, but it's something that has been spoken on for some time. And now there's a major event going on today in which they're talking more about those accounts. But that is live right now. I think we may take a moment just to listen in. You see it on your screen there. If I am correct, Naya, that is Nicki Minaj there on stage at this event, which is not something I expected at this political event here. But Nicki Minaj, one of the biggest hip-hop artists in the world for a large portion of this century, is on stage now at this Treasury Department event talking about these accounts that are going to be reportedly given out. Should we listen in on this? I mean, this is an interesting confluence of worlds here. A little bit of pop culture, a little bit of politics, a little bit of finance, kind of all in one on this stage. Why don't we take a listen in to what's happening out in Washington, D.C.? We'll have Hunter Forst right when we get out of this particular live event.
And, we're here today, obviously, to talk about this Trump accounts program. And I read in the New York Post this morning, which is real news for the most part. There's some fake news out there, right? And they might be in the room. But New York Post is real news, and they wrote today that you are partnering kind of with the Trump Accounts program to get hundreds of thousands of dollars to some of your supporters who end up having children. Why is this program something that you want to partner with and get involved?
Well, when you guys first did a live about it, it caught my attention right away. It seemed like something I had never heard of anyone doing before. And I could just tell that this is something I wish I would have had access to as a kid and as a teenager growing up, because people don't talk about how when you graduate high school, if you don't have if you're not going to college right away, how scary it could feel. If you're not having your college paid for, how scary that could feel. So, and tuition is a lot of money, and cost of living is a lot of money, and loans and all that stuff. And a lot of people forget that that's very difficult for young people, and especially young people who are ambitious. They want to hurry up and leave home. They want to go and, be in the real world. And then they get to the real world and realize, oh, it's not that easy. This is, we're going to have to pay some bills around here. And that's what happened with me. Like, I got out of high school and I thought everything was just going to be smooth sailing. But I realized quickly, no, I have to work. I have to figure things out on my own if I wanted to live a certain way. And that's what I did. But if I had access to something like this, my whole life would have been different. So now I'm thinking about, well, those kids that are bright and just don't have, they're not born with a bank account, they're not born with wealthy relatives or parents, but they have so much to offer this world. And now they get to have some sort of hope. And I'm big on hope for children and for young people. They get to have hope knowing that they can be in the same playing field by the time they're 18 or in their young 20s. They can have something going for themselves at that age, which is going to contribute immensely, in my opinion, to their mental state as well. Because when you have to worry about paying bills, it doesn't only affect your bills, it affects your mentality, your mind frame. And we need our young people to have less stress. They're very stressed out, you guys. So that's what I love.
Well, I think that was spot on, and we are so grateful for your partnership, and I hope we can see many of your Barbs make beautiful babies.
Yes, Barbs, go out there and make some babies, Barbs. We need some baby Barbs out there.
Look, a lot of politicians talk about helping Americans, but a lot of the policies have failed. We were talking backstage about, why hasn't another president thought of this, right? Why do you think President Trump is so, effective and creative when it comes to, these types of policies and being able to implement them?
Well, it's because he really wants change. He doesn't want to just talk about it. He's a businessman, which, in that world, people judge you by, are you successful at the things that you said you were going to do. So versus the average politician, they're just a politician who may want to be a celebrity. They don't care if their policies work 2 months from now, 2 minutes from now. They don't care if they inspire the next generation. They just care about getting in office. This is a different human being. This is a different president. This is a different kind of leader. This is a businessman and an authentic human being. So when he says that he wants to contribute something long-term, way after he's in office, that's what he means. And you get to see all of these other people that are, that have a lot of money and that have a lot of influence. They're drawn to that. It's like a magnet, because everyone wants to make a change. Well, the good people want to make a change for the better. So,
probably not Gavin Newsom.
Oh, no, he doesn't want to make a change. Absolutely not. Newsom only wants to be seen. He does not want to do anything credible with his time or life.
It's true.
I knew that would get them clapping.
And while he's on topic, what did you make of our great Treasury Secretary's comments about Newsom in Davos?
So spot on. You know, that's one of my new heroes, I told you, now, because of the way he so calmly and confidently obliterated Newsom.
He's very effective, especially when it comes to destroying the left when it comes to arguments. And so let's get off of Newsom because he's kind of a boring topic, right?
Very.
So, last question here is, all the president's great achievements, from tax cuts to securing our border to bringing factories back home. I personally believe the Trump accounts will have the longest term effect, because 20 years from now, 18 years from now, kids are going to, be able to inherit this money, get this money, and they're going to have $50, $100, $200,000, $300,000 in their bank accounts. And I read today that if they're 28 years old and the money continues to grow, it could be up to $1.1 million by the time they turn 28 years old. And so, do you agree that this is going to have lasting impact?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It changes a huge part of the country. It changes the trajectory of so many lives. And now, these children will be able to loosen up a bit, enjoy, being young, enjoy, time being in high school and in college, knowing that they can have fun again while becoming a businessman or a businesswoman. Like, to me, there's nothing greater, well, almost nothing greater, than teaching financial literacy to young people. I think it's so important. I think it should be in the curriculum in schools, actually, because it's a life-changing thing. They don't teach it, and it's what children need. It's what everyone needs. And these children, some of them, will be able to teach even their parents about investing, right? And I mean, that's a beautiful thing.
Absolutely. Nikki, I think everybody here is so grateful for your appearance. I know the president is. And we have a very special place we need to go visit now, so we have to cut this a little bit short. But this was such a fun discussion with you, and we are so grateful for you using your platform for good, advancing, highlighting the great victories of this administration. Also, I think most importantly, speaking out.
Okay, so Nicki Minaj, a world-renowned hip-hop artist, at the Trump event today discussing the U.S. Treasury accounts that the administration has been talking about for some time. Now, that event has been going on all day, and I do believe President Donald Trump even spoke at that event today. We'll be checking in on that periodically. First, we have a couple more things to get to. We just spoke about the situation with Ilhan Omar. She was at a town hall. She was approached by a man at that town hall and sprayed with a liquid, but she ended up being okay. The man was arrested. President Trump had words, and she has been a consistent target of him when it comes to posts and press conferences. But House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries also spoke following that incident and following Trump's comments, and we have the entirety of his interview. Within that interview, he does touch on the Ilhan Omar situation. So we're going to listen to the entirety of Hakeem Jeffries' comments now. When we come out, the very next thing we'll go to is your forecast. For now, here's House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries.
That's a disgusting comment, and the president's lies and misinformation continue to fan the flames of these type of violent incidents. And it's at a moment like this where we actually need leadership from 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, and it's something that we never get from this president. Ilhan Omar, of course, is a strong, courageous, hardworking public servant. This should have never happened. I'm thankful that she is physically okay. She's mentally strong, as is always the case, and we stand by her. Well, that's a disgusting comment, and the president's lies and misinformation continue to fan the flames of these type of violent incidents. And it's at a moment like this where we actually need leadership from 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, and it's something that we never get from this president. Ilhan Omar, of course, is a strong, courageous, hardworking public servant. This should have never happened. I'm thankful that she is physically okay. She's mentally strong, as is always the case, and we stand by her.
Much more to learn about all of that still. You posted yesterday with regard to DHS, what's happening in Minneapolis, the Secretary of Homeland Security. You put out a statement yesterday that said dramatic changes at the Department of Homeland Security are needed. Kristi Noem should be fired immediately, or we will commence impeachment proceedings. We can do this the easy way or the hard way. Does that mean you now support the effort to try and impeach Kristi Noem?
Yeah, Donald Trump needs to fire Kristi Noem immediately. We know that she is a malignant, corrupt, pathological liar. She's unqualified. She never should have been confirmed by Republicans in the United States Senate. She is creating harm to the American people. Taxpayer dollars are actually being used by the Department of Homeland Security to kill American citizens.
So
and to brutalize
short,
law-abiding immigrant families. That's unacceptable.
Short of him firing, okay, short of him firing her, you support him moving towards impeachment?
We will commence impeachment proceedings against Kristi Noem in the absence of her being fired.
Do you want to force a vote unilaterally, or do you want to launch an investigation in the minority?
Well, we're in conversation with Benny Thompson, Jamie Raskin, Robert Garcia about next steps in the process. We want to make the case to the American people as to why Kristi Noem's continued leadership creates problems in terms of the health, the safety, and the well-being of the American people. And we'll do that in ways that Democrats have done in the past, even though we're in the minority, because the issue is significant enough. We've held hearings on other issues, such as the cost of living, protecting Social Security, the health care of the American people. We can hold hearings as it relates to how destructive Kristi Noem's continued presence will be.
Virtue signaling and a messaging operation can be worthwhile, especially when you're trying to speak to the public. But is that enough if that's what this ends up being?
Congress has the power to impeach someone who has committed crimes against the Constitution and the American people. So it's not virtue signaling.
But when you are in the majority. But you are in the majority.
As you know, the impeachment process is one of the few areas where every single member has the privilege to bring a resolution to the floor of the House of Representatives and at the appropriate time force an up or down vote. By the way, even though we've been in the minority, we've compelled Republicans to move legislation to release the Epstein files. We've compelled Republicans to move legislation to wipe away one of Trump's most toxic executive orders, which is stripping rights away from more than 1 million different hardworking federal employees, collective bargaining rights. And of course, House Democrats, against all odds, were able to move a clean extension of the Affordable Care Act tax credits in the minority. And all 213 House Democrats were joined by 17 Republicans to protect the health care of the American people. If we've done it before, we can do it again.
On this issue, many Republicans are not okay with what they're seeing in Minneapolis either. As I mentioned, this seems a break from the president on this immigration effort in a bigger way than we have seen before. I mean, John Thune yesterday called this moment after Alex Preddy's death an inflection point. I want to play for you also what Tom Tillis said, because he is now the first, I would say, think it's the first in his party to call for Noem's firing. Let me play this for you.
Now, we spoke yesterday about the post that Hakeem Jeffries put up on X calling for Kristi Noem to step down, the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, that being echoed in that particular interview, as well as, once again, him touching on the incident that happened with Ilhan Omar at her town hall last night. So, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries on a number of the major stories of the week. Okay, let's do a commercial break, and then we'll be right into weather to prepare for this winter storm. The People's Producer, Nia Campbell, how does that all sound?
That sounds perfect.
Okay, good. Let's go to break. All right, our apologies for the extended break in that case, but we are back here on Live Impact News, and we are joined, as promised, for some time now by meteorologist Hunter Forst. Hunter, first of all, welcome to Live Impact. Great to have you here.
Thanks. It's always a pleasure being here with the best, Nia Campbell.
Oh, I knew that was coming. I knew there was something coming. But you're not lying. Nia Campbell is the best, the people's producer herself.
She is.
And Nia, do you think we should start with today's forecast, or should we just go right ahead and start looking at this weekend?
I think we should start with this weekend since that is the major headline.
Okay.
And then we'll tap into what's going on right now.
It's cold out, I'll tell you that.
Love it. It definitely is cold out. But we've got a long stretch of cold here. I think maybe we could have 4 days in a row where it doesn't get over freezing, and yet the real winter storm action is going to come on Saturday and Sunday. As far as we can tell right now, give us the lowdown.
Are we thinking thumbs up or thumbs down? Are you guys excited for it?
We just had a snow situation.
Right.
I know how taxing it is on our team. I also know we're up for it.
It is.
And I do love a nice, gentle snowfall. I'm kind of torn, to be honest with you.
It's looking like a pretty good shot of seeing some good snow.
Okay.
Yeah. Like we were saying, cold air is plentiful, and there's a favorable setup on the way. All models are saying that a coastal low is going to develop. Of course, where that low goes, that depends on like what type of precipitation we're going to see. You know, if it's closer to the coast or that low goes right over us, like kind of like last time, we'll see more, you know, mix and rain compared to snow. But if it's further off the coast in the sweet spot, you could see an all snow situation. And if it's too far, then you won't see anything.
So the further it is off the coast, the more likely it's snow up to a certain point.
Correct.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
because you have that cooler air filtering in the entire time from the north.
Okay.
Compared to, you know, if the low pressure system is closer, you have much warmer air coming up. So that's why. But as we look at the GFS heading into Saturday morning, got some snow coming on in for pretty much the entire region. Outer Banks could see some rain and mix. Staying like that heading into Saturday afternoon and evening. This is 7 o'clock. And then by Sunday morning and Sunday afternoon, still seeing some snow coming on down, but for everybody, even the Outer Banks on the second half of the system could be seeing some snow rolling on through. So this could be, you know, a good storm for them as well if people in the Outer Banks like snow.
I mean, that was a prolonged snowfall right there. That took us from Saturday morning all the way to Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, so it's going to be with us kind of similar to last week for, you know, a good period of time. You know, through Saturday afternoon into Sunday morning and into Sunday afternoon, at least according to the GFS. So not a super fast moving system. The Euro is a bit quicker. I'll give you that. It does move in early Saturday morning, bringing us some snow, some rain around the Outer Banks. So this is Saturday, 1 in the afternoon. Staying with us heading into Saturday evening. And then by Sunday morning, it's starting to wind down a bit. And then by about noontime, it pushes out. So about 6 to 8 hours quicker than the GFS.
Okay. So the Euro moving a little faster, but both models have snow as a part of our weekend forecast.
Both models have a good amount of snow. You know, we have about a 60 or 70 to 80% chance of seeing about 3 inches or more. Maybe up to 90%, I think, and then about a 70% chance of seeing about 6 inches of snow.
Wow. Okay.
So there's a good shot. It could look pretty.
It could look pretty. It could look pretty. This is very true. Now, speaking of pretty, what type of snow are we talking about?
Oh, and since it's going to be so cold,
yeah,
it's going to be a fluffy snow.
Okay.
So if you like to make snowballs and snowmen, not looking great for that.
Not the snow for that.
Not the snow for
What is it the snow for?
It's great for skiing.
Okay.
So I don't know.
Sledding down some hills, perhaps?
Sledding down some hills.
Yeah.
You can kind of slice through it like butter if you're skiing.
Okay.
Like you see in the movies when you're,
yeah,
you know.
Like you see in the movies, or like you see when Nia Campbell's hitting the slopes for the
True.
first time, which we're still waiting We're still waiting on Naya's first ski trip. It's coming.
Are you?
Possibly.
Cool.
I'm a little nervous.
You shouldn't be.
I don't even know how to skate.
Well,
skate.
you'll be okay.
I kind of do this thing where I'm like,
You're sort of walk skiing. Okay, we'll see how that goes.
You'll just go on the bunny slope.
I feel like I'm going to be one of those people where my legs go like this.
Well,
Definitely happens. Happened to me. Happens to all of us. You can't learn how to ski without kind of doing the splits on accident.
That's
least
a good
once.
point.
Yeah.
I went down a Black Diamond once by accident.
No way.
I did.
Is that true?
It's true.
What happened? Black Diamond is the most elite mountain on the ski resort.
It's just like straight down.
Yeah.
I went up the mountain. My mom and my grandma were at like the lodge. But I was trusted to go by myself. And
Big mistake.
Big mistake. And my mom was, long story short, my mom was like looking up at the mountain and was like, that sure looks a lot like Hunter coming down the mountain. And it was me.
So you made it down on your skis.
Straight down the Black Diamond. And you're supposed to like,
Slalom,
curve.
yeah.
And so you don't go super fast. But I just went straight down. And my mom is like running out towards me because she thought I was going to hurt myself.
You made it down with no injuries?
I made it perfectly fine.
That is incredible.
So if I could do it, Naya can do it.
That's actually unbelievable. And yes, you definitely can do it, Naya. We'll start you out not on a Black Diamond.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
That's amazing. Were you an experienced skier at that point in time?
No.
That's almost impossible. You know the Winter Olympics are coming up. Naya's super excited. We might have to try to get you involved somehow.
You know what? I'd be down.
You're a natural born skier for sure. Okay.
New England.
Speaking of skiing on snow, back to the storm that we have coming up this weekend. What else do we need to know? What do people watching who want to start their preparations need to know? How likely is this? Because I know last week you guys said things are subject to change. Is this subject to change? Do you foresee changes?
Of course, things will, the timing will change, as we head into the weekend. Maybe not significantly, but we'll have a better idea. But a lot of the models have been consistent over the last couple of days on what we could expect. So I don't think there's going to be major changes heading into this weekend, but we'll have tweaks here and there. But I would kind of, just expect a pretty good snowfall this weekend.
Okay.
Saturday into Sunday.
All right. And is it going to be such a weather event that you expect closures on Monday morning?
I think there's a possibility.
A possibility.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
For sure.
And stay off the roads. Always the number one piece of advice that we try to give to everybody. Stay off the roads. And you think that holds true. Saturday, once it starts, stay off those roads all the way through until what? Maybe Monday afternoon or something like that?
Yeah, I guess it depends on, how the roads are treated, how many plows we have around. Because, if they treat the roads pretty well and there's a good amount of plows, sometimes you could get around. But it's really the back roads that get you.
Yeah, because here in Hampton Roads, a lot of those plows are not going into neighborhoods, into parking lots and things like that. They're more so worried about those highways first and then main roads after that. So, okay.
But
so
it is good that we're going to be seeing more light, fluffy snow. So especially, if you did pick up 6 inches of snow, it's not going to be extremely hard to get rid of it, to shovel it out.
Yeah.
You're not going to have that strain of, just heavy, wet snow. You could go and it'll blow away.
Okay, perfect. Listen, it sounds like a very fun, easy snowfall. You won't get the snowball fights and the snowmen as much, but again, some sledding maybe, some kind of rolling down some hills in the backyard, stuff like that. It could be great. Let's shift gears here and talk about Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. This pre-snow forecast. Cold.
Cold.
30 degrees, 31. Is that what we're looking at?
Pretty much.
Oh, man.
I know. I mean,
we are in a brutal stretch right now, Hunter, especially for you and I. We like the warm weather. That's our thing. This has been tough.
And Connor, I've been looking at the long range models just to see.
Okay.
Like, is there like a warm up on the way at least, like 50s at least, and really no. Like,
how far are we talking here? I mean, when
this
are we
was like 10 or 15 days out.
Oh my word. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. We're gonna at some point. we're going to start to set some Hampton Roads records, right? I mean, this is just, we do not experience prolonged freezing temperatures like this often.
We don't. Normally we have like a nice warm up after, maybe 2 days.
February, January, we'll do a 30, a 31, but then we'll jump back up to a
Right.
52, 53.
But not, I'll show you the 10-day temperature forecast.
Just remember, no matter how cold it gets, June is coming. We will
It's
be
coming.
May,
Not
June,
soon enough.
April. It'll be here eventually. Okay, Saturday is the most encouraging, and that's not this Saturday. That's next Saturday, and that's 44 degrees
and still below average.
Saturdays from now.
Yeah.
And that's after. Now, let me ask you this. With us going 31 Sunday, 35, 37, 38, that snowfall that we get Saturday into Sunday, how long do you expect that to linger around on the ground? I mean, will we see that well into the week?
Certainly
Kind of
could.
clumps of snow all over Hampton Roads?
Yeah, if temperatures are not very warm, certainly could stick around for a couple of days.
Yeah.
So we'll have to see how that turns out. But like it says, bitter cold temperatures every single day. And we do have a cold weather advisory again tonight into tomorrow morning.
Okay.
Because wind chills once again will be in the single digits. So it's going to be a very cold start to the day. Tomorrow, once again, here's a look at Thursday morning. 8, 9, 10 degrees is what it's going to be feeling like. So it's going to be another brutal start to the day tomorrow, feeling like 3 in Accomack and Gloucester, 9 in Norfolk and Chesapeake, 10 in Elizabeth City. Even by, mid-morning, 10 o'clock, only feels like 13 in Norfolk, 14 in Elizabeth City, 12 in Williamsburg. So, yeah, it's just,
It's uncomfortable to be outside.
Yeah.
I mean, the lunchtime walks, not happening. Taking the dog out, if you don't have a fenced-in
This
backyard,
is what you're doing.
very tough.
You're opening up the door.
Yeah.
Putting the leash on the dog. And holding your arm out the door.
Okay.
But then you're still inside.
Naya, is that a feasible method for walking the dog in the cold?
No.
Okay. We have a ruling. We
have a
live
I don't know
impact.
if Naya was listening.
We have a live. No, we do not. We do not deny Naya Impact's live impact rulings. Okay, that is not. You got to take the dog all the way out. Let him roam a little bit. When you get in your car.
It's a long leash.
It's a long leash. That's true. You know what? We didn't ask you about leash length. Good call, Hunter. And when does the weather impact alert start for this weekend?
Saturday morning.
Saturday morning.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then that runs all the way through Sunday.
Correct.
Okay, Saturday morning into Sunday, weather impact alert, and even before that snow, it is cold, frigid cold outside.
Get some good food, some nice snacks.
Yes, get cozy. Enjoy
chili.
some chili, most definitely. Enjoy the cold as much as you possibly can, and pretty soon we'll all be back outside hanging out in the collective sunshine. Now, this is back-to-back snow weekends, also very rare in Hampton Roads. How are you and the weather team kind of holding up and shouldering this task here?
We're doing good.
Okay.
We just had a meeting about an hour ago, and we're ready for it.
Good to hear. You'll be here Saturday and Sunday.
Saturday and
You and I
Sunday.
were together on air for 5 straight hours on Saturday, and I think we did all right.
I thought, yeah.
Naya was in the booth for a large portion. I guess maybe let's have another Naya Campbell ruling here. Hunter and myself, 5 straight hours of broadcasting Saturday. How did we hold up?
I think y'all did pretty good.
Yes.
Pretty good?
Yeah.
Not great.
Very amazing.
Okay, very amazing. A whole new level of achievement.
But I do know it was stressful back there in the booth.
Oh, yeah.
It
a
was.
lot of changes.
A lot of changes, but we were able to pivot.
And
sure.
like this when we do snow coverage, everything is happening in the moment. We're getting reports from our reporters in the field. We're getting updates constantly from our meteorologists, and our producers are basically constructing whole shows as they go. They're building things out literally as we progress through the broadcast. So it's something that we take a lot of pride in, but it is something that definitely requires an elevated level of kind of work and focus and teamwork. But I think we pulled it off last weekend. We'll do it again this weekend.
For sure.
Anything else from you, Hunter Forrest?
Was that good?
Maroon tie, light green button down. We dig the combo. This is kind of a new color. New color for you?
Every time I wear this outfit, I despise it.
Okay. And yet you keep going back to it.
I don't know why I keep wearing it.
Nah, it looks nice, no?
Yeah, it looks
Yeah,
like
I don't know.
it
This
gives like a
embrace
stretch
it.
vibe.
Weird. And also when I'm at the green screen, it's tan.
Oh, interesting. All right. Will you be on at 4 p.m.?
No, Evan will be.
Okay, Evan will be. All right, so we missed our chance to see tan Hunter Force standing at the green screen.
You can rewatch the noon.
You can rewatch the noon on
13 News Now Plus.
which is also where people can interact with
Nia Campbell.
No, Nia Campbell is not just available on 13 News Now Plus at any time for your news needs. I'm talking about 24/7.
That's true.
Let them know where they can find, because with this storm coming, people need updates all the time. Do a little pitch for us.
Yeah, so 24-hour radar, temperatures, futurecast, OTT.
Available
videos.
at all times on 13 News Now
Yeah,
Plus.
so you'll be able to get up-to-date information about what's going on during the storm at any moment during the day. It's great.
And we'll be covering this plenty here on Live Impact News as the storm approaches, along with our usual, winter storm schedule of all the things you can do to stay safe, to stay warm in the midst of another winter storm. Hunter, you're the best. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, guys.
Nia Campbell, one last ruling. How did Hunter do today?
You did amazing.
You did amazing.
Oh, thanks.
You're welcome.
This is a studio full of love right now. And I think what we're going to do is we're going to take a brief commercial break here. We have multiple live events happening right now. Brief commercial break, and then we'll figure out where to go from there right here on Live Impact News. Okay, back here on Live Impact News. We are not going to waste any time because lawmakers have gathered in Washington, D.C. at an impromptu press conference. Let's go live out to D.C. and listen in.
The Democrats have had full input into all of them, and they have all passed the House, overwhelmingly bipartisan numbers. Republicans are committed to working with the Democrats to keep the government open.
It seems like a government shutdown here, a partial shutdown, would be different, however, because the federal pay period almost gets you to the middle of the month based on the timing here. The FAA and air traffic controllers, they've already gotten a paycheck, and they still have some leeway. So the impacts fundamentally would be different.
Not entirely. I mean, you still have the uncertainty that comes with it. I mean, yes, you may get this paycheck. Am I going to get the next one? I mean, the last government shutdown that the Democrats put us into, they kept it going for 43 days. And, you know, honestly, it's not necessary. Government shutdowns don't benefit anyone. I've said this many times before. And so, in my view at least, and I think the view of all of us, we ought to pass the package on the floor, fully fund the government, and move on to other things that the American people expect us to work on.
President Trump has repeatedly urged the passing of the SAVE Act, as well as many MAG Republicans. What is the holdup in the Senate? Why hasn't that been brought to the floor for a vote? And what's your stance on requiring improved citizenship to vote in elections?
Well, I'm for that. I've co-sponsored the SAVE Act in the past. I think my understanding is that they are still modifying the bill. It includes right now a requirement that you be a citizen to register to vote, but it doesn't include a requirement that to vote you be a resident. So in other words, if you're going to have what we call voter ID or photo ID when somebody goes into the ballot box to vote, that's not currently covered in the bill. So that's been fixed and addressed, and I think the new bill that comes out hopefully will deal with that. But I mean, at some point we'll have that vote. I'm for it. I think most of our colleagues in the Senate are, and I don't, you know, it hasn't had consideration in the relevant committee yet. But I know there's a high level of interest among our members in getting a vote on SAVE Act.
It's responsible for the secretary to say that Alex Clinton brandishing a gun and was a domestic terrorist and was out to commit massacre, as other administrations have said, despite the video evidence of that incident contradicting everything they said. Was that responsible for them to say that?
I don't, again, until the investigation is complete, and I'm all for an independent, full investigation to get the facts out and to make sure there is an accounting for what happened there. So there have been a lot of statements that have been made, I think many in advance of actually having the facts in front of us. So I'm going to refrain from saying anything about that until we actually have an investigation that's been completed.
Do you see a viable off-ramp to the current situation? For instance, would you support 5 appropriations bills plus a CR for DHS while the negotiations continue?
Those all are potential. I mean, these are all hypotheticals at this point, and I would reserve optionality to consider that. But I think the best path forward, as I've said, is to keep the package intact. And if there are things that the Democrats want that the administration can agree with them about, then let's do that. Because the challenge you have, as you know, especially right now with the narrow margins in the House and the Senate, is if the bill goes back to the House of Representatives, and and who knows what happens with it over here. If that bill gets split off, and maybe other people have other ideas about other amendments and things they want to consider. If the bill changes much from what the House already passed, then you've got another steep hill to climb over there. All of this just drags things out and delays us funding the government. And the longer that it's delayed around here, obviously, we end up in another government shutdown. So there are potentially, obviously, lots of different things that could happen. But the best thing to happen is the thing that we should do right now, and that is pick up the 6-bill package passed by the House of Representatives by an overwhelming majority and send it to the President for his signature.
Mr. Lee, do you still have confidence in Secretary Miller? Should she stay in her job, and do you also have that same level of confidence for Stephen Miller?
Well, I've said this, you guys ask these questions a lot about different members of the President's team, and I have the same answer, and that is these people serve at the pleasure of the President, and it's important that the President have confidence in his team. And so I will, allow the President to make determinations about the people that serve on his team. Thank you.
Okay. A brief press conference there from Republican lawmakers, including Senate Majority Leader John Thune. And a major talking point in that is a possible government shutdown. There are spending bills that must pass by January 30th to bankroll government agencies, Pentagon, Health and Human Services Department, and others that, again, have not been agreed upon by Republican and Democratic lawmakers. And that January 30th deadline just 2 days away now. And immigration enforcement policies at the center of a lot of those disagreements. Now, we had the longest government shutdown in the United States history at the end of 2025. Are we going to start 2026 with another government shutdown? it looks possible based on some of the rhetoric that we were hearing, some of the reporting that we've been seeing, but still 2 days until that deadline. Now, we have another live event going on right now that we want to make note of here. Kid Rock, the musician, and other officials are testifying currently during a hearing to examine the impact of ticket sales practices and bot resales on concert fans. Witnesses include, of course, Kid Rock, entertainer Brian Barry, and other corporate and regulatory affairs agents, representatives from Live Nation Entertainment. So a lot of different aspects of the music industry, or a lot of different representatives from different levels of the music industry, going to be at this hearing talking about ticket sale practices and resale practices. We know that ticket prices for concerts have gone way, way up in recent years. We also know, just as consumers here, as people who like to go to concerts, that sometimes not only can the prices be outrageous, the process can be outrageous, and resale value also can be outrageous, especially with bots, if they are a part of that process here, as is indicated by this summary. Let's listen in live to that hearing. We've got a couple local things we want to touch on as well, but for now, let's listen in to this hearing featuring Kid Rock and others on ticket sales practices.
This hearing room, and I said, tell me the first concert you went to. Nearly every one of you could name that event for me. You could talk about that day. Some of you would talk about what you wore. Some of you would talk about what you said and the friends that went with you for that event. And of course, the disappointment mounts because the tickets are gone. Fans are not angry about the fact that tickets are popular and that events are popular. They're fans, and they want this experience. What they're mad as hell about is that the system is stacked against them. The ticket industry should desire to do better. They should want to do better for fans of these artists and sports teams and shows. But consumers have lost faith that the rules apply not equally to the marketplace and to them. They favor the bots, the brokers, all the bad actors that are in this marketplace. Now, for years, many of you know this, about a decade, I've been working to address these ticketing issues because fans deserve fairness, transparency, and a real chance to see the artist they love, the teams that they love. And that is why Congress passed the bipartisan, bicameral, Better Online Ticket Sales Act, the BOTS Act, to stop the use of these automated tools and the other schemes that are cheating consumers, that are circumventing safeguards and undermining trust in the live entertainment marketplace. For years, the FTC failed to use the tools at their disposal to go after the scalpers. And by the way, they didn't have any help from Ticketmaster going after these guys. Now, that changed when President Donald Trump went into office. And he was joined in the Oval Office by my friend Kid Rock. And President Trump issued an executive order on combating unfair practices in the ticketing marketplace. The order specifically urged the FTC to rigorously enforce the BOTS Act. Chairman Ferguson immediately answered that call, and I'm pleased that the BOTS Act is finally being enforced as intended. There's so much that we are going to discuss today, including the ongoing enforcement action being pursued by the FTC against Live Nation and Ticketmaster. The FTC suit alleges that bad actors routinely bypass ticket limit enforcement measures to buy large blocks of tickets, which were then sold on Ticketmaster and Live Nation's own resale platform. How about that? Going to get you coming and going. Instead of holding these brokers accountable, and by the way, they know that these bad actors are out there, the FTC alleges that Ticketmaster turned a blind eye to these violations and violated the Bots Act simply because Ticketmaster wanted to make an extra buck. They're looking for that extra % on every sale. Over 3 years ago, Mr. Joe Burkhold, the Live Nation president then, sat before me under oath in the Senate Judiciary Committee and said that Ticketmaster does everything in its power to stop scalpers using bots and other means of circumvention from hoarding tickets and harming consumers. If the lawsuit against them is any indication, that is far from the truth. I will tell you this. If the local utility company and the local bank can block the bots that are trying to get in their system every single day, every day, a powerhouse like Live Nation, Ticketmaster, honest to God, ought to be able to figure this out, and I am tired of waiting on them to do something about it. It is negligent. I'm also looking forward to discussing the consumer protection issues specific to the secondary market, like speculative tickets, deceptive URLs, exorbitant resale prices, and a number of other issues addressed in legislation that this committee has worked on for years. Here in Congress, we're going to continue to fight for the fans and for the artists and ensure a fair ticketing marketplace. At this time, I recognize the ranking member for his opening statement.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you all for being here. It's easy to see that, we deal with a lot of emotional issues in this building, and this is not there's no difference here. People care about music in a very powerful way. I think this is an important discussion around the live entertainment industry today in this country. Fans across the country dedicate their time and their energy to attend live entertainment, like whether it's on concerts and sporting events. Live events brighten our days. They help bring communities together and create a sense of purpose and unity. When you're part of an audience with a major musical event, you become part of a community in the duration of that performance. These events allow performers to show off their talent, oftentimes at the highest level, and they're creating memories that will last a lifetime. Somebody who grew up in the 60s and went to Woodstock, I realize that's no proof of product, but I have seen my whole life people having those memories change their lives for the better. But what once was an easy, clear, reliable experience for fans to get online or walk up to a box office and buy tickets has turned into a confusing marketplace. Today, a consumer will have to pay an additional administrative fee, a delivery fee, a payment processing fee for every ticket they purchase. It's a checkout gauntlet. When I was in the restaurant business and we opened brew pubs across Colorado, and our North Star was to always make sure that our customers, in music you'd call them our fans, that they had the best possible experience, that there would be the highest probability that they would come back and be a repeat customer, right? The cheapest customer to get is the one that you've already had. If they ordered a craft beer, our job was to make sure that the craft beer was the best craft beer that they could get. Today, a fan can purchase what they believe is a legitimate ticket to an event, only to be turned away once they get to the venue because what they bought was a fake or a speculative ticket. This deception means less fans for supporting performers. It erodes the trust in the entire entertainment industry. Obviously, it disappoints fans. We want fans to experience Colorado's landmark venues, Fiddler's Green Amphitheater, the Fillmore Auditorium, or God bless it forever, Red Rocks Amphitheater. I've had some of my greatest performance memories, not me performing, trust me, Although I did once play the banjo on the stage to Red Rocks, but I'll stop bragging.
Maybe you can get hired.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I've tried. It didn't work out. I'll never be hired to do music, that's for sure. But I think.
All right, so there you got a very brief look at that hearing on ticket sales, concert tickets, ticket resales, things of that nature. Those prices, again, have skyrocketed in recent years. That particular representative talking about Red Rocks in Colorado and his own music career a little bit. But we actually are going to take a quick break. We've still got a lot of things to get to today. We won't be able to get to everything, but we're going to try our best. So let's go to commercial. We'll be back here to explore some other headlines. Okay, as you can see on your screen, Jerome Powell from the Federal Reserve giving a press conference right now as we speak. The Fed announcing a decision today to hold interest rates steady for the first time since July. This is also the first time that they have had that discussion since a criminal investigation was opened into Jerome Powell in regards to building renovations that are going to be happening to the Federal Reserve's headquarters. Powell, of course, released a video statement after that investigation was open, saying the pretext was to punish the Fed for not cutting rates more quickly. That is what the message that he relayed in his video statement after that investigation began. And that all comes after President Donald Trump had been vocal in pressuring the Fed to lower interest rates. But the Fed today deciding to hold those interest rates steady in today's decision-making process. Let's listen in to Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell now.
There was broad support on the committee for holding today. Broad, I would say, including among non-voters. So that's where that was. Of course, some people did want to cut and dissented, but committee pretty broadly for holding today. We're not trying to articulate a test for when to next cut or whether to cut at the next meeting. What we're saying is we're well positioned as we make decisions meeting by meeting, looking at the incoming data, evolving outlook and all that. And, we're in a position where, we still have some tension between employment and inflation, but it's less than it was. I think that the upside risks to inflation and the downside risks to employment have probably both diminished a bit. So, we'll be looking at that. It's about how you weigh the risks to the two goals and how big those, and quantify them. And so there are different views on the committee, and, we'll find our way forward as the data evolve.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Edward Lawrence from Fox Business. Has the effects of tariffs already moved through the economy on prices?
A lot of it has. So basically, there are many different estimates, and they're all highly uncertain. But most of the overrun in goods prices is from tariffs. And that's actually good news, because if it weren't from tariffs, it might mean it's from demand, and that's a harder problem to solve. We do think tariffs are likely to move through and be a one-time price increase. So most of the overshoot, if you were to take that out, inflation, core PCE inflation is running just a bit above 2%, x the effects of tariffs on goods. And the other good news is, if you look away from goods and look at services, you do see ongoing disinflation in all the categories of services. So that's a healthy development. So that's what's going on. The expectation is that we will see the effects of tariffs flowing through goods prices, peaking, and then starting to come down, assuming there are no new major tariff increases that are begun. And that's what we expect to see over the course of this year. If we see that, if we see that, that would be something that tells us that we can loosen policy. Also, if we see something that suggests that the labor market is not stabilizing, that in fact the downside risks reemerge, or the data just get worse, we'd have to look at both of those. We have a two-sided mandate.
If I could, if President Trump does pick a new Fed chairman before May, what does that look like? How would you work with that person, and what does that transition period look like?
I don't have anything for you on that. That will depend on Congress's actions and things I can't speculate on.
Howard Schneider with Reuters. Thank you for taking our questions. Given the changes in the statement and all you've said so far, is it fair to describe risks to both sides of the Band-Aid as roughly balanced right now? And is the next move necessarily down?
I'd say that the upside risks to inflation and the downside risks to employment have diminished, but they still exist. So there's still some tension between the mandates. Are they fully in balance? Hard to say. And we think our policy's in a good place. I've just discussed reasons why we might change our policy, and we'll just have to see how the data lead us.
I'm wondering, a minute ago you said you felt expectations were consistent with your mandate. That the 2 and the 10-year break-evens have moved quite notably in the last couple of weeks, I believe. Is there any concern on that front?
I mean, I recently looked at all of the both survey and market-based short-term inflation expectations have come way down. They were in a good place at the beginning of last year. They spiked around Liberation Day, and now they've fully retraced in the last few months. So that's very comforting. And the longer-term inflation expectations have remained in places that are very consistent with 2% inflation over time. So expectations have been solid, and they reflect confidence in the return to 2% inflation.
Andrew.
Apologies if this is a little bit repetitive, but in the past you've said that the reason you cut rates was that the risk to the labor market was greater than the risk to the inflation side. Is that still true?
We haven't made. You're right. We saw the labor market weakening, and we acted, and I think that was the appropriate thing to do. We will always act to address what we see as the economy moving away from our goals. Risks to both of the variables are a little less. I think the upside risk to inflation, again, a little bit less, and the downside risk to employment, a little less. I just would say that I'm not making a judgment about how, one of them is more at risk than the other, just that the risks to both of them have diminished.
Okay, thanks. BIS wrote a paper last summer which concluded that global investors were hedging their dollar exposures in ways that previously they hadn't because of policy uncertainty. Do you agree with BIS?
We really don't see much at all about that whole story. There's just not a lot of data that suggests that there's much to that.
Thanks.
Anna Swanson with the New York Times. Can you talk more about what you would need to see in the labor market to conclude it's time to resume easing? Do you need to see further deterioration in the labor market, or would it be enough for inflation to soften?
So we'll always be looking at both things. And so there could be combinations, infinite numbers of combinations that would cause us to want to move. Certainly, a weakening labor market would be an argument for loosening. But what's happening with inflation? If inflation were at the same time getting worse, you just have a very difficult situation there. So we'll be looking at both. Clearly, a weakening labor market calls for cutting. A stronger labor market says that the rates are in a good place. We'll have to be making similar judgments too on inflation, though.
And if inflation does pick back up and the labor market doesn't show further signs of deterioration, is there a chance that you could raise rates rather than simply remaining on hold? What would you need to see to consider hiking?
We don't take things off the table, but it isn't anybody's base case right now, anybody's base case, that the next move will be a rate hike. But ultimately we'll do what we think is the right thing. But that's not where people's expectations are right now.
All right, so Jerome Powell addressing questions about their decision to hold interest rates steady for the time being. And again, this all comes while the Federal Reserve is under pressure from the presidential administration, is under investigation as we speak, along with the Supreme Court hearing oral arguments last week on Trump's attempt to fire Fed Governor Lisa Cook over allegations of mortgage fraud. No president has fired a governor in the Fed's 112-year history. President Trump attempting to fire Lisa Cook. That case, oral arguments beginning at the Supreme Court next week. So the Federal Reserve in the news in a multitude of ways. But today, doing the job that they were originally put in place to do, which is monitor interest rates, and they have decided to hold them steady for the time being. Okay, we've got one more break in this show, and then we're going to finish with a few more major stories. We have some major live events going on right now. Let's do one more commercial, and then we'll finish up here on Live Impact News. Okay, back here on Live Impact News, where we heard from John Thune earlier today, speaking at the podium in Washington, D.C. Now Chuck Schumer has taken that podium in Washington, D.C. Let's listen in as more comments likely about this impending government shutdown. Let's have a listen.
Body cameras on. Federal agents must be prohibited from wearing masks. They must be required to use body cameras, and they also always have to carry proper identification. No more anonymous agents, no more secret operatives. These are common sense reforms, ones that Americans know and expect from law enforcement. If Republicans refuse to support them, they are choosing chaos over order, plain and simple. They are choosing to protect ICE from accountability over American lives. Let me be clear. Democrats stand ready today to pass the 5 bipartisan bills in the Senate. But the DHS bill needs serious work, and Republicans and Democrats alike owe it to the American people to get it right. It's now on Leader Thune to separate out the DHS bill, just as Speaker Johnson did in the House, and start working with Democrats to rein in ICE, imposing oversight, accountability, and empowering local law enforcement in our communities. Our communities deserve it. The American people deserve it. Senator Murray.
Well, Democrats are ready to avert a shutdown. We have 5 bills we all agree on, about 95% of the remaining budget. It is ready to go. We can pass those 5 bills, no problem. All Leader Thune has to do is tee them up for a vote. The ball is in the Republicans' court. But when it comes to DHS, we cannot ignore what happened on Saturday, especially after what we have seen over the last 12 months. We have to split this bill off and grapple with the brutal reality that ICE and CBP are out of control and endangering American citizens. The brutal killing of Alex Pretty was an inflection point for this country. We are saying enough. DHS agents shot and killed another person in broad daylight. He was a legal observer. He went to just help a woman, and then he was tackled, disarmed, and shot in the back. Then, instead of conducting the most basic oversight, the administration has attempted the most blatant cover-up. Instead of even acknowledging this was a tragedy, they tried to slander a VA nurse as a domestic terrorist. This cannot stand in America. That's why we are demanding Republicans work with us on serious reforms to rein in this department. That is why the vast majority of the American people are demanding we do, and what many Republicans are now calling for as well. So we need members on both sides to sit down and include critical reforms and accountability measures within the DHS bill. And there is no reason whatsoever for that work to hold up the other 5 bills and cause a shutdown. We do this all the time. We move forward on the areas where we have an agreement. We roll up our sleeves and keep negotiating on other issues.
Okay, so continuing to talk about avoiding that government shutdown, you also heard Senator Schumer talking about some things that they would like to see when it comes to immigration enforcement at the top of that soundbite. Now, that may have been the top of that soundbite, but we have reached the bottom of this show. Naya, was that a smooth way to end it there, what I just did? Was that a good segue?
Yeah, that was pretty smooth.
Okay.
You landed the plane.
Very nice. The plane is landed. Does the pilot have any last words?
No last words.
Okay. Hope to see you back here tomorrow for Live Impact News. Thanks for watching, everybody.